I just want to say a couple quick things to Maura in the Danbury Chamber. It's cool to be back here in Danbury. I mean, I grew up in Danbury. Rich grew up in the area as well. So for us, to partner with Danbury Chamber, it's really cool to come out and be part of the community again. So thank you to Maura and the crew here. I want to thank you guys for coming too. I started running these events because I built a natural food merchandising business prior, and it was super dark. I felt alone through the whole process, and the most I learned was just having conversations with peers. And so that's honestly what this is. The format is just going to be Rich and I having a conversation, talking about his business, what he's going through, how he's building it. And I'm going to shut up most of the time and let this guy talk. And hopefully we'll post something out, and then we'll do a little Q&A at the end. So again, I just want to make sure, can everybody hear us? Okay, if you can't, tell me, run up here. Okay, perfect.
Same thing here? Good?
And I want to say thank you to Rich as well for he is not getting paid for this at all. So he has kids at home, so thank you.
The funny part is they brought the insurance guy, the tax guy, the lawyer, but they didn't ask the food guy to bring the food. So I got off the hook pretty easily. I just had to show up and talk. So we're good.
That was, a clear miss on my end. So, okay, so we're just going to jump in and have a conversation. So thank you guys again for coming. So why don't you start off with kind of what you're building? Mecha, the family business, what the businesses are, the scale of it. Give the group a sense of what that is.
Yeah, so I think the best way to think about this is that I think about our company in kind of two different branches. One of them, we call it the legacy brands. And those are the brands that were started by my father when I came to this country when I was 4 years old. Really comes down to an institution here called Amigos Deli. The deli has been here since 1991. I grew up behind that counter. So my family has been in food service since I was in kindergarten. And from that, we've kind of spun off and done a couple other concepts here in Danbury. One of them being Mina's Carne, it's a Brazilian barbecue restaurant. And another one being a Mexican taqueria called Mariposa on Mill Plain Road. So those are our establishments here in Danbury. And then I was lucky enough to have a best friend whose family also runs restaurants in Danbury. And that concept is called Pho Vietnam. There are two that exist in Danbury today. And there came a moment in time where we looked at each other, we're like, dude, we've been best friends since first grade. Why are we competing? Why aren't we working together? So we decided to kind of join forces, and collectively we run the two Pho Vietnams, the Amigos Deli, the Mina's Carne, and the Mariposa Mill Plain Road. That's the legacy side of what we do. And during that partnership join up, he decided that Connecticut didn't have any ramen, and he wanted to open up Connecticut's first ramen shop, which is called Mecha Noodle Bar in Fairfield. And we've been blessed enough to take that concept from 1 to 11 units over the last 10 years.
Wow. Now, I've talked to a lot of people who run restaurants, and it's interesting when you ask them what the product actually is. Some of them have different answers. Some people think about, the food, the quality of the food being the product. Some people think about the experience. Some people think about the community. What do you think of your product as? When you think, and maybe you could give some color on all sides of your business.
Yeah. I think it starts with experience and trying to understand who the end user is. So one of the things that I love to talk about when it comes to this question of who are you, what is it that you actually do, I kind of think about food as one of two things. It's either food for fuel or food for experience. So if you think about that, when you're trying to get a meal, you're either trying to feed your belly and fill up, or you're trying to have a special moment in time with a special group of people. So when I look at some of our legacy brands, particularly the delis or the fast casual Mina's Carne, that's food for fuel. So when I look at them through that lens, what I'm really trying to do is deliver value very quickly with a lot of choice, because ultimately that's what we want for our bodies in a quick moment. And food for fuel, food for experience is totally different. It's about creating a moment in time for people to be able to break bread, to create community, to create memories. And when you think about a concept through that lens, you're thinking about it a little bit differently. You're thinking about it not just in terms of value proposition and speed and choice, but you're thinking about it also in terms of environment, ambiance, feel, music, and kind of a more well-rounded envelope for the concept itself.
Mm. So Mecha seems like it's really niche, and yet this is kind of the concept that is scaled into different states. What has to be successful, or what has to be true about a location for it to be successful?
Yeah, if I had that question perfectly answered, I'd be the greatest restaurateur that ever lived. So one of the things I've gotten to learn in my own career, and actually I was just told this, rest in peace, from a mentor of mine that recently passed about a month ago, but he once told me, if you're in business and you roll the dice 10 times and you win 8, you've won. And I remember him telling me that at a time when I closed my first restaurant, which was 2015. So on that legacy side of the business, we had a restaurant called Barrow in Fairfield, Connecticut, that closed back in 2015. And at that time, it was a struggle. It was the first time I ever had to close something. It was the first time coming up, graduated fourth in my class, high school, NYU, 4.0 GPA, you name it. So it was the first time I had to kind of look this idea of failure in the face. And he told me, if you roll the dice 10 times and you get them right 8 times, you've won. So when I think about this idea of restaurants, there's a black magic to it where it all comes together that I don't know what actually is in that recipe. I know what the components are, right? People want to talk about location and obviously having corner visibility and patio. They want to talk about being where the dining dollars are spent. So wherever there's a food and beverage corridor, they want to talk about making sure that what you're offering is something the community is looking for. But all those things kind of come together in a way that it's like quantum physics. Yeah. Like you know that the cork exists, but you don't know where it is at any given moment. That's the black magic of a restaurant.
So do you still feel nervous when you're opening a new location?
100%. Yeah. I tell my business partners all the time that the hardest thing that I do within my job as this company's CEO is to predict the top line of a new restaurant. It's the hardest thing that you ask me to do. Ask me to do anything else, and I'll be very confident, have a certain level of certainty in my answer. Ask me how much the new restaurant in X location is going to do, and I'm going to give you an answer, but I'm not exactly sure where it's going to land.
So how do you even go about looking for a location? What are you actually looking? What are the components to say, I think this is a good bet?
Yeah, so it depends on the concept, and it depends on whether you're getting this food for fuel or food for experience. But Mecha Noodle Bar, I'm going to talk about that specifically because there's multiple of them. So we kind of look at real estate across the country. We are a Southeast Asian comfort food concept. So we sell Vietnamese pho and Japanese ramen. These are bowls of noodle soup that go for $15 to $18. It's not a high price point. So our average guest is sub 30. So it's something that could be afforded multiple times a week for people with families. I say that to say we tend to excel where life happens. What I mean by where life happens is where is there a nail salon, where is there dry cleaning, where does the community come together to do its normal day-to-day, week-to-week stuff, and I want to go there. Because ultimately sometimes there's a mom who has to bring their kids to soccer practice at 4:30 and pick up dry cleaning at 3. She knows she's not getting home until 7:30. So us being in that same plaza where the karate is helps us get that sale. But for some concepts, it's more destination. It's about where the food and beverage corridor is because people want to be seen and see others. So you'll go to where the biggest concentration of restaurants are, and you'll pick that spot.
Sure. So it feels like you're living in two different worlds at the same time with the kind of local businesses and then this more kind of scalable concept you're working on. How do those two differ? Like, where are they maybe in conflict? Where are they the same?
I don't think it could be more night and day. So you guys in the crowd here today and have scaled the company, you think back on the way you used to do things and the way you do things today. Well, I get to live in this world where there are the ways I do things today and the way we used to do things. So Amigos Deli, Mina's Carne, they still tend to do things the way that they used to do them because they're single unit. My dad's still there every day. They're family run, but at the same time, we know there's limitations to that. So on the Mecha Noodle Bar side, we kind of adopt best practices. We deploy technologies. We do due diligence on real estate in a very different way. So for me, it's kind of getting to live in both worlds, which I kind of find fun because you always remind of where you came from and what will never change. So those two things are constantly at odds.
Yeah. How do you structure those two sides of the businesses to have enough capacity to run them both well?
Yeah, I think people always talk about human capital, and I think it's about aligning the human capital with what you feel like you need for your company. And for me, those are really big decisions to join Mecha Noodle Bar and help grow that concept because at the time my family had 3 restaurants and I was pretty much in the leadership capacity of those restaurants and I didn't quite understand how I'd be able to be the CEO of 2 companies at once. So it's something I struggled with. I talked to my dad about it, I talked to some mentors of mine, and ultimately what came out of it is, can you figure out the things that you think someone else could do as good or better than you to allow yourself to go do the things which that other company needs right now? And we took one of our highest performing managers and made him a district manager and give him a profit share and said, hey, here in Danbury, Connecticut, you represent me. You're the best I've seen operationally, and I need to not think about the operation. I can still think about the legacy brands in terms of the brand proposition, the value proposition, and how we evolve over time. But day to day, making the train run on time, that's you. And it was the greatest decision we ever made.
How long did it take you to feel comfortable in a transition like that?
3 to 5 years. It was a 4-year plan.
Yeah.
his compensation structure was structured that way. It wasn't one of those things where it's like, hey, here, go do this new job that my dad has been perfecting and I've been perfecting for the last couple of decades. We said, year one, here's the comp structure, here's what success looks like. And year four, here's what success could look like, and here's the comp structure. And he hit it out of the park.
How did you, so I hear this problem often with people I talk to, which is how do you incentivize somebody to really take full ownership of something? It's a complicated thing, right? How do you go about figuring that out?
Yeah, I think it's knowing your people and knowing what matters to them. I don't think it's a dollar. I don't think it's a benefit package. I think it's really understanding what's important to that individual. So for this particular individual, I know that one day he would probably become a business owner. He has the capacity, he has the hunger, it's what he wants to do. So if you know that, you start asking questions. And what comes out of that conversation is what he really cares about the most is being in full control of his time and not having to be in a particular place from 9 to 5 or 10 to 10 and be able to travel back to his home country in Brazil. So what did we do? We structured a comp structure that says unlimited PTO. I don't care. I don't care how many days you take off a week. I don't care how many hours you work a week, but here are the deliverables. So in essence, we create an environment where he is an owner, where he's getting to manage his own time the way he thinks is most effective. And then it's also being compensated with a profit share, which means there's no limit to the upside. Sure. So speaking to that particular person's need, I think is always step one.
Sure. So the first time we met, you kind of talked about how you've been in restaurants since you were a kid. And you grew up in the family business, and they kept you involved. And then you went into more of the corporate side of things and into the finance side, correct?
Yep.
What did growing up in a family restaurant tell you about kind of the industry that you apply today? Same thing on the corporate finance side. What have you taken from both? And maybe what are some things that you might have had to unlearn as you've kind of gone in and scaling the Mecha side of the business?
Yeah, I think for the family business, the thing that it taught me the most is that you hear a lot that it's never personal, it's business. I call bullshit on that, personally. Yeah. I think behind every business there's a person. My dad taught me that. One of the things that he taught me when I'm working with people is to speak into the person, speak into their consciousness, speak into their heart. So I think that that's something I carry with me today, that it doesn't matter whether we employ 100 people or 500 people. It's making sure that you're still recognizing the human being who's in front of you and speaking to them as an individual. So that's something that I think sometimes in the corporate world gets lost. Because we have the opportunity to look at numbers and look at spreadsheets and forget that behind every number there's a human, and behind every human there's a story, and behind every story there's a life experience. So for me, I can't forget that because I walk into Amigo's Deli every day, and the people who've been in there have been in there with us for 10 years, 15 years. I've seen their kids be born, I've seen their kids graduate high school. So this idea that there's a human in a story, in a lived experience, I get a reminder every day. And I think that certain people aren't quite as lucky. And on the flip side, the corporate kind of finance side of things, it teaches you about the need for structure because as you grow, things become more and more intense and there's just more of. And if you don't have the appropriate discipline and structure within the organization, it can come crashing down. Sure.
So what did you see in the Mecha concept that you felt this thing could scale? Was there anything specifically about the metrics or the structure of it or how the customers appreciated the product? Like what was it? You said, let's give it another shot and grow.
Yeah, one of it was novelty, just the fact that there was no ramen in Connecticut. But the thing that really sold me, this will speak to my corporate finance side, is that my business partner, Tony Pham, we were talking through, whether we should create this partnership or not. And I was like running myself through the economics of the actual business model. And I was, in our industry, it's guest counts and average guest drives your top line. So those two things matter the most. So I was trying to understand kind of what was the potential for this ramen bar long term. How many times can you get somebody to walk into the door? And then when they walk into the door, how much can you charge them? So running this quick model of like a 90-minute turn time, $30 per person, yada, yada, yada. And he said to me, and I'll never forget it, he said, I can make 3 bowls of ramen the time it takes them to make a burger. And I just froze. And I was like, wow. I never thought about it that way because there are a lot of people who come to Mecha. I don't know if anybody here has been there. Sometimes you come as your family, you have a full dining experience, appetizers, entrees, but you can come in, order a bowl of pho, that be at your table in 90 seconds, you eat it in less than 10 and out the door in 12. So that was the aha moment that this concept has a lot of breadth across different consumers for a lot of different needs. It could meet the amount of lunch break day part. It could meet the takeout day part because of its price point. It could meet the date night one. It could meet the friends just trying to enjoy different appetizers. And I started to understand the true breadth of what it offers the end user, the guest. And that's when I was like, okay, there's something here.
Was there, a number of locations that you opened where it hit you like, damn, we've got something? Like at what moment did you feel like there was really some fire here?
I've had a few of those moments that then have turned into not those moments over time. So I think that for one of the coolest things I got to see with Mecha is that when the first Mecha opened, me and Tony were best friends since childhood. So even though I wasn't there as a business partner for the first one, I was there. I was literally there for 72 hours in a row before we opened, helping him get open, right? And I remember when the door opened, we would send the staff, we meaning I was just a friend, I wasn't a partner or a worker, but we send the staff into the parking lot, like go get guests, like go bring them inside and get them to come eat. Because at the time, no one knew what ramen was, no one knew what Mecha was. And then you go on to unit number 2 in Norwalk, and we position our staff outside the building to just grab people as they walk. And then this is the moment I'll never forget. New Haven goes to open, which is unit number 3. And Tony and I are always the first guests at all of our restaurants, and we pay full just to honor what's about to happen in the transaction. And it's supposed to open at 12, and we got there at like 11:45, 11:50, and there was 3 people in line before the door opened. And that was that other moment, like, aha, there's something here. And next thing you know, we're opening up in Washington, D.C. seven years later with 100 people, 120 people in line before the door opens.
Wow. So it's pretty rare to see a restaurant go beyond one location. What is the difference between more of a mom and pop restaurant and a location that can scale?
What is the difference?
Is it just risk?
Risk tolerance, I think, is a big one.
Yeah.
I think it's really a big one. I also think getting beyond the artistry of our craft. So I'm sure some of you have known chefs or bartenders. A lot of us are artists, and a lot of artists are tormented souls, I like to say, which also leads into a certain level of control, right? So for Tony, being the creative, the culinary, I give him all the credit in the world because he knew what he could not do well. He knew off the gate that he needed someone for organizational discipline, for finance, and said, come and be my partner and deal with this part of the business that I don't want to do. Versus some people don't have that humility and think that because they can put a great dish on a plate and put it in front of the guests that they can do everything else. And I think that's where I think a lot of times scale goes wrong.
So I built my business with my best friend too, and I was the finance guy, operations, and he was more of the creative. Sounds like kind of your partnership. Yep. And I know firsthand how that can be amazing, but it can also take some turns if you don't work on that relationship well. How do you manage keeping your guys' relationship positive when you both have kind of 2 conflicting perspectives, I imagine, at points?
Values alignment is my hands down answer. So a lot of times you'll hear people talk about partnerships and say, find someone who complements you or skill sets opposite to yours and help balance each other out. I think that's great, but that will never work if there's not true alignment between you two in terms of human beings, what you value. So for me and him, we value a lot of the same things as humans. So when there is a tough decision to make, that's the lens that gets put on. It's not the lens of finance or creativity. Is this aligned or misaligned with who we want to be?
Sure.
And that makes the process much easier.
How much time do you guys spend together? Do you spend time in the business, outside the business? Like, what's that relationship look like?
Yeah, I mean, it was a ton of time. He recently moved to New Haven when he had his first child because of his wife and where she's from. So not as much as it was before. But before that, it was like a brother. Like my kids are 3, 5, and 7. So my 5-year-old and my 7-year-old, they're like 2 peas in a pod. We were like 2 peas in a pod, except we were 20, 25, and 30, and 35. So we recently left the pod as we had kids and how to build our lives. But a tremendous amount of time has always been spent.
Yeah, it's what I learned about building business, especially when you're growing fast and taking risk. It's like you have to commit to staying on the same page and keeping that relationship strong. So I was curious about that. You're a finance guy. I mean, you guys are at 10, 11 locations, you said. You could keep going as fast as you want. Really, the only governor is probably capital and risk. So how do you balance that? Where is the line between you saying this is too risky, too fast, versus maybe going too slow?
Yeah, it comes back to that values question. So me and Tony, one of the questions we ask ourselves all the time is why? Why do you do this? Or why do we want to do this? Or why do we want to put up another location? And as long as you can keep clarity around that question as to why, it helps filter all the other questions. So for us, our why is being able to continue to impact the communities that we operate in. And if we ever have to do a deal that might jeopardize that, then it's a no. So it's not about the amount of units, it's about the impact. So for us, I talk about values. Impact is a huge value that we both share. So if it's ever going to be a risk proposition that may jeopardize our ability to impact the world the way we want to, it's a hard no.
Yep. What does impact mean to you guys?
Yeah, impact takes many forms. I'll talk about it first at the human capital level within the organization. So we believe we're not building a company. We believe we're building a transformational platform. And what that means is that we invest heavily in the personal development of our team. And I'm not talking about personal development from the perspective of how to build a better spreadsheet or make a better, what's that thing called, PowerPoint. I'm talking about your EQ, your ability to clearly communicate, your ability to navigate uncomfortable situations. Because those things happen not just in work, but they happen in life. Sure. So if we can give you the tools and the resources to get uncomfortable and grow, we think that has a ripple effect in the larger world outside of our four walls.
Sure. So if we were going to look at your P&L, this group, where would we be surprised that you're spending a decent amount of money?
I mean, you shouldn't be surprised based on what I'm talking about right now, but this idea of professional development, it's a big one. So I'll just give you guys a couple examples. So if you are a salary leader at Mecha Noodle Bar, which means GM, head chef, sous chef, and above, there are a lot of things that are available to you that might seem a little atypical for industry. One is someone like Dan. So we have 2 leadership coaches who are available to our leaders at the store level and above the store level. But alongside that, there's also a meditation coach. So it can help you teach you meditation and spirituality from that perspective. So those are 2 things. You know how much it costs, so times you by 3, and maybe more because you're talking about Fairfield, and people tend to charge a little bit more on the Gold Coast. So those are some of the investments that we make, and then we do an offsite every year. We usually do it up in the Berkshires in Massachusetts for 3 nights with all of our leaders, and it's 100% personal development, where we bring in some public speakers and kind of put them through different exercises and challenges. And I mean, I'll just give you the number. That's well over $100,000 a year just for that event, because we have about 45 leaders who come. They all get their own room, 3 nights, food, speaking fees, all that kind of stuff. So it's a place that we invest heavily in because, again, we're not building a company. We're building a transformational platform. And the last one, which I'll talk about, which I'm not sure if you'll end up going there anyway, is our Eat Justice program. So one of the things that me and Tony talked about when we became partners, it was actually one of 2 requirements to become partners. One was that I see a spiritual coach, just FYI. It was his company. He said, there are 2 things you need to do. And the other one was to find a way to give back. So I was a yes on both. And what we ultimately came with how to give back is that a lot of times in companies, I'm sure a lot of founders and CEOs here get asked all the time for donations. You get asked for donations in kind, or you get asked for donations in cash. And it's kind of awkward to be asking people for money all the time and having to say yes or having to say no. So we wanted to figure out a way to leverage capitalism for good, but built into the business model, where philanthropy wasn't something that you do because you look at your P&L and you're like, I think I can afford this. So what was born of that was this idea of Eat Justice, and we wanted to pick one of the most highest selling menu items, which is ramen for us, and we increased the price by 50 cents, and that 50 cents goes to a local charity every month. But that is not a 50 cents you opt into or opt out of, it is just our price. So if our competitors are selling bowls of ramen for $15 or $16, we're selling bowls of ramen for $15.50 or $16.50. And that 50 cents goes to a local charity, and that generates on our P&L about $300,000 a year at this point to local charities. So it's on our top line, right? We bring in the $300,000 in sales, but then the P&L pushes it back out to local charities.
Wow.
So you're talking about almost $500,000. Come on,
that's
a year
a lot of money.
in investing in people, right?
Yeah, totally. That's amazing. That's awesome. I want to switch to how you operate. I want to get into that a little bit. So if you had to boil your role down today into a couple of core responsibilities, what do you see your role as?
Don't run out of cash. And I say that because we went through an aggressive growth period. So I wouldn't be saying this if I hadn't lived it. And I think that's what we're here for, right? We're here about sharing our lived experiences as professionals, as humans. So our quick growth journey was getting from 1 unit to 5 in Connecticut. And then we opened up 2 units in Massachusetts. And then we took a leap of faith and opened 3 units in 3 different states in 1 single year. Suicide mission for a restaurant company. Do not recommend anybody ever try that again. So that got us to 10. And then we opened Philadelphia and Massachusetts. And what I learned in that experience is that I'm sure there's some people here with four-wall businesses where you have to build a facility like this. And I haven't met a person who has not gone over time and over budget from a CapEx perspective in building a restaurant, right? What I didn't realize is that it's going to take you twice as long and cost twice as much to build your brand as well. So when we went from 1 unit to 5 in Connecticut, there is some brand equity here in the state. So every time we opened up, there was more and more people in line. And in Massachusetts, it's far, but not that far, where people, because of the universities and the trade-off between Connecticut and Massachusetts, the brand is known. The amount of investment that it took to get Washington, D.C., and Denver, and Columbus, Ohio, to understand the brand, well, we underestimated severely. So we're in a position where our legacy brands bailed us out, and we're able to help with some cash flow. So don't run out of cash. It says job number one, because if you do that, then you don't have a company anymore. I think beyond that, being able to set a vision and clearly articulate it is very important. Actually, I would say probably the most important thing, because I think that most people want to be a part of something. They want to wake up and feel like they're making an impact and adding to the world in some way, shape, or form. So what does that look like for your company? Why should I work for you versus anybody else? Because ultimately, the market sets the price, right? Like when we talk about a director of marketing, capitalism sets the market clearing price for that position. I don't choose, right? Capitalism says it's somewhere between 100 and 150, most likely. So for those people applying for that job, why you? When everyone else is paying me 1 to 150. So the idea of setting a vision and articulating it clearly, I think, is really critical. And then the last one is humans. We want to feel connected. We want to feel motivated. We want to feel enthusiastic. So I look at that as recruiting and maintaining top talent. And how do you do that? And I think it's about the human and not the job, which is why I keep going back to this idea of personal development, this idea of speaking into somebody. Because if I can really know you, I can walk alongside you. And if I can walk alongside you, there's nowhere else for you to be or want to go.
Yeah. How do you choose where you show up? I mean, you got so many places you could show up in a given day. How do you make those decisions on where and when?
Yeah, this is a really good example of that corporate discipline, kind of working from that side back to the family business. Is I had to learn this, is that you have to make structured time for the human experience, because there's so many different pulls on you at every different time. So for all of my direct reports, what that means is a one-on-one once a week for 1 hour. And it's structured in a very particular way. And that's wins, losses, and confusions. So come in and tell me what you thought your wins were for the week, and let's celebrate. I think most companies, mine included, don't do that well enough. Celebrate the wins. The losses, we all know it's an opportunity to get better. That's no secret. But the thing that I focus on the most is confusion. Because if I can create clarity for great people, they will do great things. Great people only don't do great things when there's a lack of clarity.
So what do you look for in a great person? I mean, this is a subjective term. You know, everybody that I work with struggles with that senior management layer where they're like, how do I know this person's going to be successful? What are you specifically looking for in a person?
Yeah, I hate to keep beating this drum, but Jeremy's here and he's known me for a long time. So this is just the way that we operate. Rule number one at Mecha is be a good human, period. Rule number two is build better humans. So that's my first filter. I'm trying to get an understanding of who this person is and how do they show up in the world. And if I feel like there's a person there who shows up in a way that contributes to society, then we can have, I shouldn't say contributes to society, shows up in a way who wants to help transform society to a better place. If you come from that ethos, then we can talk about your skill set. But first and foremost, it's a person that I want to take the journey with and I want to be alongside.
How do you prove that out? I mean, I interview for a position and you're like, how do I know Dan's just not faking it?
Yeah, a lot of times they are. So for us, it's making the decision after 2 to 6 months, because I think it's really easy for you to, in an interview process, present a certain way. But when there is conflict in the workplace, how do you show up? How do you communicate? How do you not communicate? Do you back channel things? Do you work around people? I think that tells you a lot about the person. So I think it's letting them be who they're actually going to be in 2 to 6 months, and then not being wedded to, well, I've already invested in the person, I've already trained them.
Yeah.
You got to make that decision and move forward if you have to.
Sure. So one of the things that when I think about building my business and I reflect on it, I think of a business as like, you know, it's like a baby going to a toddler to a kid, and it's going through these evolutionary phases with growing pains. And the person that comes out of these phases is a different person. And when I think of myself in building my prior business, it was the same. You know, when I was kind of started, I'm doing every role in the house. I'm, you know, confident, I'm fast. When I start to build out my management team, I'm slower, I'm confused, I'm less confident, I don't know what I'm doing. And then I gain more confidence, and then I start to hire a C-suite, and I'm way less confident again, like I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. What has been the hardest phases for you, and how have you transformed as a leader through those phases?
So I agree with you with the ups and the downs. One of the things I love to talk about is, people always look at a company that's going to a certain size and like, oh, it must be so great to be there. Like, it's a sure thing. And I say all entrepreneurs are 2 inches from the cliff. It's just a matter of how high that cliff is. So if you're a $50 million company, it's 10,000 feet in the air. If it's a $10 million company, you're 10,000 feet in the air. You're still on the cliff, right? So I've been through that journey as well. And I have to say that I've been pretty lucky on that first hurdle of like, I have to be in all places at once. I didn't have to cross that hurdle because I grew up in a deli with multi-unit. So like I knew I couldn't be all places at once. So I think what it really came down to is recognizing that your company always go as far as the people who lead it day to day in the four walls. So that was a big revelation for me. And for us in the restaurant industry, that means our district managers. So all of our restaurants have a 4-person leadership team, head chef, sous chef, GM, AGM. The person that those people see on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis is a district manager. So what I quickly learned is that Metro will only go as far as the district manager can take their team. So understanding that was the hardest kind of transition point to say, okay, it's no longer about me, it's about you, this particular position. You unlock everything for us and investing in that particular position. I think that was probably the biggest stumbling block, underestimating and under-resourcing that position. Because we thought about, build the suite, the CEO, the COO and the CFO. Yeah, great. The server who makes you feel good doesn't know who that CFO is.
Right.
Who that server knows is that district manager. So we made the mistake of investing at that high kind of caliber level instead of that middle management level, which I think is so critical because they touch the humans every day. I think that's true of any industry, quite honestly.
Yeah, I made those mistakes too. What metrics do you care most about when you're looking into kind of each of these restaurants and locations?
Yeah, restaurant specific, I think we all look at our top line, and for us, there's this metric called prime cost, which is really just your kind of gross operating margin. And I think that from a business perspective, those are the two things that we care about the most. But what we really look at is guest sentiment, because ultimately restaurants are hospitality. Hospitality is a feeling. And if you feel a certain way, you're going to speak a certain way about that concept online, whether that's on Google, whether that's on Yelp, whether that's on Belly and any other platform that you know today. So our guest sentiment score is the thing that we really keep a close eye on, trying to make sure that guest sentiment score stays healthy and just trying to understand the trends and how some of our operational changes may be reflected in that. So how our guests are talking about us is, I think, the number one sentiment that we kind of look at.
Yeah. If we were hovering kind of above you and your management team on a day-to-day basis, again, where would we be surprised that you care so much about?
The hourly level.
Yeah.
Maybe you won't be as surprised if we're talking today, but I had said that my dad came to this country and started this deli, and I was 4 years old when he started it. So I grew up behind a counter. I'm still the Migos Deli kid through and through, no matter how many restaurants that we open. So it's actually something that our leadership team, not that they take a gripe with it, but every now and then it's always back to house hourlies for you. It's always back house hourlies for you. And for me, my answer is yeah, because those are the people that are putting the food on the plate that gets to the guests. So I think the amount of time we think about the hourly and their experience would probably be the biggest surprise for people.
Interesting. So you talked about the ledges. What have been some ledges for you? Like what
ledges you said?
The ledges, the dark moments kind of in everyone that I know has gone through a moment where they thought they were going to fail, or, I was having panic attacks personally. Mm-hmm. Like what have been those moments where you're banging your head on the wall, and how do you kind of get to the other side of those?
Yeah, well, I've talked about two of them. One was that first restaurant closure in 2015. And what I learned from that one is that the restaurant closure was not a reflection of me and my own failure. I was just an unlearned version of myself. That's what I kind of really came to. And I think that applies to all the mistakes that we make in life. No one intentionally makes a mistake. You're just an unlearned version of yourself at that time. So I think that one was really important for me to kind of embody and integrate that lesson into my day-to-day. And then, when we were lucky enough to have these legacy brands to help us out 24 months ago when we kind of grew a little bit too fast, too quick, it's the importance of never losing sight of your values. because I think we got misaligned and got excited by the big unit number count and lost track of why we were doing it in the first place, which is why we regrounded ourselves in that. So I think that always going back to your why, grounding yourself in your why, and then knowing if you followed your why and ended up in a precarious position, it was just an unlearned version of yourself. And that's okay too.
Interesting. One of the things, building a high growth, higher risk type of business, right, where there's blue sky and you can continue to open locations, there's a cost to that. There's a financial cost, of course, right? Like, don't lose cash or have enough cash in the bank. But then there's a cost on your personal sanity, your work life, right? You're a dad, you got kids. Mm-hmm. Emily and I were talking about this before about balance, right? And how do you find balance? And we were joking that I don't know that that's a real thing. But how do you actually build your business in a way where you can grow fast, take risks, but also be present for your kids? Like, how do you intentionally do that?
Yeah, I would really challenge the idea of whether it's a real thing or not. So I'd ask you, or you ask Emily, like, what's important to you? Because I know what's important to me. And if I can figure out what my non-negotiables are, I can build a company and I can build a schedule that honors those things. So let's speak about kids really quick. And I can't take credit for this. A mentor of mine helped me with this. We operated in Connecticut only, and then we had to open up, or we decided to open up in Massachusetts, and then we were going to open up in like DC and Denver. And I really struggled with this idea of us doing this because I don't want to be a road warrior. I don't want to wait for my kids. And she said to me, she built an amazing company, a recruitment company in our space. She said to me, hey, Rich, I had the same decision to make when I was a young mom. And the rule that I came up with is never more than 2 consecutive nights away from home. So I don't care what the client needs from me. I will get the job done in 48 hours, even if it means 2 18-hour days in meetings back to back to back. And I remember that, like, that feels good. I can honor that with my kids. Like, I can walk away from my kids knowing I'll be away from home 2 nights and no more. So that's important to me. Never being outside the house for more than 2 consecutive nights. It doesn't matter if those 2 days are 20-hour days, but it gets me home. So that's one. And then just like for me, working out in the morning and going to the gym is also a non-negotiable. So there are a couple of things that for me that I won't compromise on in terms of integrity and alignment. Sure. And I can build a company around those 2 or 3 things. It's when I think I need to be all things to all people at all times that I kind of lose my path.
Yeah. So where are you taking Mecha from here and the other businesses? Where do you guys want to go looking into the future?
So if you follow our Instagram, the legacy brands actually has an exciting new announcement. We'll be opening a second Mina's here in Danbury. It's going to be taking over the Mariposa on Mill Plain Road. So that's a really exciting new chapter for us because we're going to take something that we've kind of done incredibly well, in my opinion, but also put a lot of love into. So if you're not from Danbury, we bought that brand back in 2009. And if you remember that brand, I'll put it this way. We've more than tripled the sales of that brand since we bought it in 2009. So that just goes to show how much blood, sweat, and tears have been put into it. And we want to give it another facelift and add some cocktails and food for experience. So that's a food for fuel. Can it take on an iteration of food for experience to give a different element to the Danbury dining scene? So that one's going to be really exciting coming this summer. And for Mecha, we opened up 5 restaurants in 18 months. So we're taking a nice break and taking a nice pause, and I'm really excited about it. We're not opening any restaurants this year. We will not look at any real estate probably to the back half of the year. So we're probably looking at 24 months without a restaurant opening, unless, where's the mayor? Where's he at? He's here. Left. He gets his way and gets us to do a Mecha in Danbury. But besides that, we're going to be taking a break from the growth path for Mecha. And I think that's also important. This idea of balance, balance doesn't look the same every day. It's about different cadences at different times. So you can run 100 miles an hour for 18 months, but then you should probably take 18 months to go 20 miles an hour. And that way you can kind of always kind of stay true to center.
Yeah. Yeah, we made that mistake. When we were building our merchandising company, we were just trying to go. No reason. If I actually looked in the mirror and said why, there wasn't a real good reason, and we hired 50 people in a quarter, we got way over our skis, the market turned, and we just put ourselves in a totally unnecessary situation that cost people jobs. And it's like, I think what you said about looking in the mirror and asking why is a really critical question, because you can, again, catch yourself with unnecessary risk for no reason at all. So that definitely resonates with me. Last question for you. And by the way, if you guys haven't been to Mina's, a couple of minutes down the street, check it out on the way home.
Open till midnight.
Yeah, I'll probably be stopping there on the way home. If someone in the room is trying to scale something meaningful, what would you tell them to be really careful about?
Diluting how you define impact. I think we did that. I think that when we started off to create this transformational company, we had a very clear idea of what that looked like and what impact meant to us. And then you get the taste of success and you want to run faster and you want to add unit count, but that unit count was never part of that original conversation. And it wasn't until those 3 stores really cost us a good amount of our time, sleep, and money that made us reevaluate that question of why that we got back to it. So I think it's just the human experience to maybe get wound up a little bit too quickly.
Sure.
So being mindful of that and having people like coaches to see where your blind spots are, I think is really, really, really important.
Cool. Awesome. We're going to open it up for some questions now. So yeah, I see Chris over there.
I love personal development, the focus you have, bringing people together to help them. How do you measure that from an ROI standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, there's ways that we can just look at kind of the typical corporate lens is in terms of turnover, right, and tenure of your team. And we all know how much that costs on a kind of year-to-year basis. But I also ask myself this question: how does it feel to work here? I think that that's something that we can't put a number on. But many of us have been in environments where we're in meetings and we're like, oh, I can't wait for this to end. One of the things that we do here at Mecha is our senior level team is a little bit spread out across the country. One guy's in DC, somebody's in Maine. So we're all required to work in Connecticut for 1 week, a month, the first week, back to the human experience and grounding us piece. But one of the things I find so interesting is that, back to balance, I won't start my day before 10 because that's how much time I need for the gym and drive to Stanford, all that kind of stuff. So those days are typically structured 10 to 5. And it's 5 o'clock and no one's ever leaving. So you can't measure that. But the CFO from DC and the director of HR from Maine, they will stay till 6, 7, not working, just amongst the rest of the team, with the training managers, with the beverage manager. They genuinely like to spend time together, even if they're not being tasked with something. And I think that speaks volumes to the health of the organization.
Cool. Who else? Yeah.
Full disclosure, I'm a fan. I've been to most of your brand storefronts, and across the board, I have, as a customer, had a really positive experience. I've enjoyed the restaurant, and I've got the sense that all the people who were working in the restaurant were happy to be there and kind of jazzed. So my question is, do you have a customer service philosophy throughout your brand, and how do you drive that to the individual level?
Yeah, the big thing I mentioned when we talk about hospitality is that hospitality is making something happen for you, not to you. So that's the driving sentence, right? Can I make people who come into the 4 walls feel like something happened for them, not to them? Because I think too many times we're in transactional environments, whether they're restaurants or something else, and this is happening to me, as opposed to this is happening for me. So if I can train my teams to create moments where I'm making something happen for someone else, I think you'll feel that more times than not. And then in the environment that I'm working, do I feel cared for? Do I feel seen? Do I feel heard? Back to your question, right? Ultimately, I don't know how many of you have been to our brands, and we're definitely not perfect. But it's something, I'll say this, when we started to build our executive team, this director of HR, this CFO, this learning and director development person, one of the things I kept getting from them as they went through the interview process and eventually joined is like, I don't understand how the hourlies care so much. I've worked for Fridays, I've worked for Kava, I've worked for X, and usually the hourly population is the most disgruntled. But for some reason, in this organization, it is the one that's most enthusiastic. So I attribute that to this idea of making sure people feel seen, making sure people feel heard, making sure that they have something to get up for and be enthusiastic about, and then making something happen for them.
Cool. Yeah.
When you were having conversations with your partner trying to decide if you were going to be partners, how did you phrase or what types of things did you guys have to start that conversation, and what was kind of that final point where you said, okay, we think this is worth it?
Yeah, I said no a million times for a lot of different reasons. One, and this is my story, but I think it'd be helpful to anybody who finds themselves in the position. I was done. I had to close my first restaurant, and I said I'm getting off this horse, and I redid my resume to go back to New York City and finance, and I just didn't want to look a failure in the face. That's what it was. And I was lucky enough to have mentors in my life who made me look in the mirror and have that hard moment. So once I was able to get past that, the conversations were about values alignment for both of us. And ultimately what we came down to was this idea of legacy. So what legacy means to Mecha is that we're looking to transform the way middle America or Main Street America, not middle America, but Main Street America interfaces with Asian cuisine. Because for most of Main Street America, that means Chinese takeout. But Asian food is so much bigger than that. So for us, we have an opportunity to redefine how people relate to Asian food. So that was one of them. The other one is equity. And I know in business, you hear a lot about equity meaning owning a part of the company. For us, equity means that when you leave these four walls, you will be better than when you walked out. And that might be a skill set, that might be a title, that might be compensation and a bonus, that might be personal development. But we are wholly committed that everybody who walks in through our doors, whether you work for us for 1 day, 1 month, or 10 years, you will walk out with more than what you came. And that's equity. And the last one is community. So this idea of using capitalism to help build up the communities that raised us. So all the conversations that were had, that were many, they ultimately came down to, well, what do we actually value? We value community, we value equity, and we value this idea of the relationship piece, culture. Now I just forgot it, but the Asian American food piece as well. So staying grounded on those three things for us.
Can you share the recipe for the cheese spread at
I can't because I don't know it myself.
Now, my question is, you talk about hiring, but inevitably someone gets through. Costco has a way of dealing with it. Trader Joe's, they have exceptional employees, even Chick-fil-A. Someone must get through. How do you handle someone that's obviously not fit for culture, despite the process of hiring?
Don't be afraid to make the decision quickly, is what we've learned. And that doesn't mean pull the trigger at the first sign of trouble. What it means is have the conversation at the first sign of trouble. So you get hired today as an hourly store member. One of the great things, in my opinion, about healthy cultures is that they'll self-police to a certain extent, where people will know that this person is probably not the right fit. So another server might talk to a manager. That manager's responsibility is to sit down and have a conversation with that person and try to understand kind of what is it about the person that's not working for them, or what are we doing that's not helping you be the best version of yourself. And one of the things that we learn is if you have that conversation early, you have a really great opportunity to turn it around and or just know, hey, it's not a good fit and that's okay, and be able to part ways from there.
The notion of the 80-20 rule, 20% is what you put in is going to create 80% of the revenue, and vice versa. Sometimes you spend 80% of your time on creating 20%. I was just curious from your perspective, if you subscribe to that, what's something that maybe on the 20% side that you want to focus more on? What's something on the 80% side that you're ready to give up on?
I don't know if I wholly subscribe to it in the sense of your business will only go as far as you're willing to become. So when you talk about the 80-20, I'm 100% in on my own development. And that means everything that I just talked about for our company, but I have multiple coaches as well. So I continue to lean into my own personal development, not at the 20% to give me the 8% return, but as of the 100%, which will allow me to do everything else. And I know it's not maybe a straight answer, but ultimately, I don't look at it as siloed buckets in terms of, I'm going to work more on the guest experience, or I'm going to work more on our hiring or our training. I'm going to work more on me, which will then allow me to surpass any 20 or 80% in front of me. Yeah.
Oh, my family and I are huge fans. My
Thank
kids
you.
especially are Mecha Noodle. Now I know how to pronounce it correctly. We're very excited in New Haven that you've expanded because it was a much smaller space.
Right.
Which leads me to my question about demand. How on any given night do you understand what the demand might be in actuality, but then also what the unconstrained demand is? Because there are people who walk by and say, oh, I don't want to wait 45 minutes. I've never had the 12-minute Mecha experience, unfortunately. And so I'm wondering how you use that unconstrained part to evaluate growth?
Yeah, this is that cool part about the corporate side. Like, I don't want to come off as scale is bad or good or family is bad or good. They both have their assets. So we're lucky enough now to be in a position of having technologies and tools in place where we can forecast our sales pretty accurately per hour, per unit. So that really helps us understand both sides of it. The constrained side, meaning what is historically telling you, but also if there's a 10% drop in temperature, forecasted, what is that going to bring you in unconstrained potential sales? So it's called Restaurant 365, but our technology on the forecasting side takes into account historical data, takes into account weather, and then takes into account the general manager knowing their community, meaning, are there any special events going on this week or weekend that get plugged into it? It just gives us a really, really great idea of kind of what's going to be coming into the doors. And my family businesses don't have that. So things will happen like, I don't know, this happened very recently. I forget, there was some kind of bad weather around here in the last month or two. And I guess we were one of the only delis that were open, and we ran our skeleton crew, and our guys at Amigos got rocked. But I think that's something on the Mecha side, which would have been picked up by that technology to understand kind of, hey, when there's inclement weather, here's what tends to happen to your sales.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Because you're dealing with such creative people all the time, you're from your chefs to, to your marketing team, how do you make it open and inspire them to communicate with you their ideas? Do you have like an open forum for them to express themselves? Or, how do you make that work? Because you can get great ideas, but it just doesn't fit in your, model or your inspiration, kind of like, okay, it's great, but maybe pull back. Or, hey, that's a great idea. I think that's maybe we do this as special and see if it runs and then implement it into the menu.
Yeah, so that's a great question, especially in our space because there are so many creatives. So this idea of creating disciplined structure at scale for things like that is that the chefs have the ability to run a weekly noodle bowl, a weekly snack, and a weekly bow. So there are some who love it and create dishes every week. There are some who don't. Same thing on the beverage side for our bartenders. So we've created intentional spaces for people to be able to use their creativity as an outlet. Now, if you're talking about outside the food and beverage and maybe from a marketing perspective, for us it's just being accessible enough where people will feel comfortable reaching out. And for us, that's pretty easy by just being available in our stores. And we also run a weekly alignment call, which is open to anybody in the company, which is an hour and a half long every Thursday at 9:30 a.m. And yes, we will talk about things to keep us aligned, as I've been talking about, but also you're happy to jump on and be able to share that idea and have it evaluated by 70 to 80 people who are on that call.
Do you use those ideas? Like, do you use Twitter, like kind of like these ideas?
Sometimes, this is not a Mecha thing, but if you're a fan of the pineapple at Mina's Carne, that was a staff member. I was like, why don't we do this? And I was like, I've never seen a steakhouse sell pineapple. I don't really get it. But want to try? Like, yeah, 20 cases of pineapple a week are sold out of that business with cinnamon over the live fire. Go pineapple.
Yeah. Do one more. Anybody else?
I just want to make a statement. I think what you're doing is so important because for me, you have to understand. I've worked in the hospitality industry for years. I'm not doing that right now, but I always think people first. You have to make sure that I always want people to be happy when they go to work. They're more motivated. If it means, I just said to Dawn, sitting here when you're talking about working on yourself and having a spiritual retreat for your employees, it made me think about the yoga classes that I used to conduct at the hotel I used to run. I had people come in and do the same, like similar. They didn't go away, but it was accessible for all the employees. And anyway, I just want to commend you on caring about their well-being first, because that's definitely what I think motivates people.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, we one of our core values that we use is profits matter, people matter more. And we try to live by that. Profits matter, people matter more. And we also try to make sure that people understand that profits matter, people matter more doesn't mean you matter more, because it gets twisted very quickly where it's someone is terminated from the company or any kind of situation like that. And it's like, well, you said people matter. The collective. The health of the collective matters. The collective health of the people matter the most. So we always try to it's a conversation we always have to have. It's like people want to use that core value against you. It's like, it's not about you, it's about the entire collective and making the healthy decision there. But I did feel a fire, but pull my phone 1 second just to speak to that because it's important to us, and I think it's something that we've talked a lot about today. When we had to grow those 3 units and got a little ahead of our skis a little bit, our senior ops leader, amazing individual, Jeremy knows him as well, we had to part ways because our G&A was just too high. And great human being, and I still keep in touch with him today. I haven't talked to him in about 6 months. Last night, he texted me, I just had a moment where I realized I would have not done the opposite. I just had a moment where I realized I would have done the opposite had I not met you and what you helped me find. Super grateful to have you in my life. That's why we do what we do. This is a gentleman who worked for us for 3 years. So when you want to ask, how do you measure it? That's one of the ways that I measure it. When someone who hasn't worked for me for 18 months and I haven't talked to in 6 months can send me a message and say, hey, I showed up different because of what I learned during my time at Mecha.
No doubt. All right, guys, thank you so much. Thank you again, Maura. And yeah, we'll be doing more of these soon. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's fun.
Good.
Thanks so much, man.